So I've got some questions about the show. Let's start off without going into too much detail. What did you think, Steve?
I mean, as far as the movie goes, it was a great movie. Visually, the director does a good job of giving you that expansive universe that the books have. Um, I've seen it 3 times now, not in the theater, obviously. I watched it on HBO Max twice, and then I saw it in the theater with you guys the one time. Um, it's held up. There are, and we'll go into this later. There are some issues I have with it, but I mean, overall, they did a good movie that people that have not read the book can go and feel like they've seen the full experience. Well, they've seen half of the experience of the book.
You think it's half the book?
Oh, it's definitely half the book. Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was half or maybe a third.
Yeah, no, it cuts out. Well, okay,
It's a big book, isn't it?
it is a big book. It is half of the book that is going to make it into the movie. There's a lot of stuff. If you've ever read a book, there's lots of stuff in the books that just never would translate well into an actual movie. Gurney Halleck playing the balisade, for one thing. While it's really cool in the book to show the character having that not only a master tactician on the battlefield, but he's also a musician and a poet. That's interesting character development, but it would probably be kind of boring to watch on a big screen, in my opinion.
What about you, Avery?
Yeah, so I enjoyed it. As a person who is a huge just visual nerd, being in the industry that I am as a designer, I love everything visually about Dune. My mouth, and you probably didn't notice because you were asleep, Chris, but my mouth was pretty my mouth was pretty much just open the whole time and just amazed of just how visually pleasing I was with everything. That's one thing I always look for in movies and cinematography. It's just how well is everything shot, how well is everything lit, and I feel the director worked really well with the cinematographer to make sure that everything was just good. And one thing I did notice, because I think this is the same director who also did Blade Runner 2049, is just how similar of just the shots he used in both Dune and Blade Runner. Like I felt the aesthetics was very, very similar. And to Steven's point, I feel like, as he was saying, you can watch this movie and not know anything about the books and still feel like you understand the setting that you're in for this movie. You understand, like, okay, this is what Dune is about. Okay, this is pretty much like you got space pirates, you got politics, you have the family dynamic of trying to be royalty. You got the Game of Thrones elements, and then you have so many elements that I feel a lot of people can come in here and be like, okay, I can not have to be a book nerd or a Dune nerd, as most people are, and still enjoy this movie.
Yeah. No, I kind of agree with that. And we'll get into that. I liked it. It left me wanting more.
Yeah.
I was upset when it was over, and even though I missed, I was like, now I have to wait. And to top it off, when we saw this, and even the last 2 times that I saw it, we didn't know if it was getting a sequel. They finally greenlit that, like, what, Wednesday?
Yes, and and I'm sorry I didn't mean to cut, and I'm glad they did. And I agree with you, Chris. It's so a lot of Hollywood and movies these days, right? It's the whole, they try to make this huge expanded universe and make half a movie or a third of a movie without knowing. A franchise without knowing if we're going to have another one, right? So now you're left with wanting more, and then say, it didn't get green lit. Now it's like we got left on a cliffhanger, and now we're just upset, right?
I think a lot of the diehard Dune fans that love this movie would have been livid if they didn't get the rest of it,
the second half.
And
it's really a series of, I think, 13 to maybe 20 books if you count his son's books. The Dune universe is quite expansive in the book form. I think you have to at least do the entire first book, potentially, and there. We'll talk about this a little bit more later as we talk about the film, but they foreshadow events that are not in the first book, but become pivotal in the later books, when like God Emperor of Dune and stuff. He has that vision where he sees the Fremen in the white and the gold suits. That's not in the original Dune book. Him having the vision where he sees a holy war in his name, and people worshiping at the skull of his father. He mentions all that. Well, that all happens later in the other books, but they foreshadow that, and they lead into his desire to become the Duke, but his fear of becoming, the Quixote Hot Rock and becoming that, the holy war in his name and his father's name. And they really play really well in that. So
yeah.
So I have some questions about this movie. The first one is rather basic. I have something I would like to share.
Okay.
Let's see how I can do this here.
You got this, Chris. I believe in you.
Like everyone's been on this Zoom lifestyle, and I haven't had to do that. My job just doesn't have it. Like, just doesn't require all that much. So let's see if this actually works, because I tried it with some other software, and HBO was like, F you. All right, so you can see it.
Nice. Well done.
My first question: what the hell is this thing?
Oh, his little Navi orb looking thing that follows him around?
It looks like it's like, I can't recall if they addressed it in the movie or not, but it looks like it's just a nightlight that follows him around. What is
it's
this?
totally a nightlight that follows him around. That's
Right.
amazing. I want one.
Right. It's funny. Yeah, I kind of, so a confession to make myself. As far as the Dune books go, I've read the first one, but it was a very long time ago.
Okay.
So my knowledge of, and I was like I think like middle school or high school, like it was just, I was stupid young, so my memory of recollection of anything in the book is almost non-existent. But I did have the same thought too. I was like, what is this thing that's following him around, and why did all of a sudden it's just not there anymore? Like when when they're actually escaping and stuff. Like I thought it would just kind of be like a Navi thing where it's just it's this little guy.
Like it's like little AI thing, yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I want to say there were other characters that would randomly have one following them. Like I think his mom might have at one point in time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could be making shit up, but no. And this thing was in several scenes. They never addressed it. It was just some floating light.
Well, the important thing to remember is in the universe of Dune, what's something you've never saw in any images of their bedrooms or anything, the War Council. They don't have computers. Technology is different in the universe of Dune. In replace of computers, they have mentats, which are never mentioned in one of my gripes. They never mention the word mentat, even though they have them. The characters that advise the Duke and the Baron with the little thing on their lip, which is also a change from the book. In the book, their lips are dyed purple from drinking a liquid made from the spice that gives them the ability to be human computers. Ah, there he is.
Wait, hold on.
No, not right there. That's the Duke.
Damn it. You click
and
on
whoever
it,
that guy is.
you click on the frame and it doesn't even go to the one that it doesn't. And of course, I can't use the arrows to freaking.
Of course not.
Oh my God! Come on. There we go.
There you
That
go.
guy.
There we go.
What did you say he was? A mentat?
He's a mentat. So these are the computers in the universe of Dune. Or Doom. Dune. You're gonna have to edit that one, Chris.
I'm not editing shit.
This is all that. This is all that, buddy.
Yeah. So he actually has the ability, because of spice, to A, live longer, and B, to be their computers. He can calculate things. And you can see here his eyes are rolled up in the back of his head while he's doing some calculation. I believe this is where he's calculating how much it costs for them to fly all of those people out from the Emperor's homeworld to do this fancy ceremony to transition control of Arrakis from House Harkonnen to House Atreides, which is billions and billions of their currency, which is astronomical amounts that only huge houses can afford to pay. But no mention of him being a mentat, no mention of the spice being what gives him his abilities, which is disappointing because they really kind of dropped the ball on why the spice is so important. In the books, spice is what allows space travel.
Right.
They don't really they mention it in a voiceover, but they don't really explain that without it, they had to spend years, sometimes hundreds of years, traveling from planet to planet. Whereas once the spice was discovered, the navigators were able to kind of mutate and use the spice to fold space-time so that they could travel from one point to another point instantaneously. Now, in the 1980s film, they show the navigators and they explain it relatively well. In this, all they do is they talk about the navigators, which you see in this scene here, the guys with the copper masks over their face. Presumably those are the navigators. And what it looks like they do is they open up a bridge, an Einstein-Rosen bridge, between one space and another space, because you see all those ships flying through that big structure. I don't know if you can find it, Chris. It's right at the beginning of this scene. But they're flying through that structure. And if you look in a few scenes, you can see through that structure and you can see a planet on the other side. So that's kind of what I think they're implying here. But that's not really how it's explained in the book.
Right.
Yeah, no, I
don't know. As people that didn't read
this
book,
thing right here, but I like to get the view of the front of it. But like
I don't understand if maybe these things are in orbit around all the major planets, which would be useful for planets you already have. But in finding new planets, this kind of technology would be useless.
Right. Yeah.
So you saying that, how they might like use these things as a bridge, makes so much more sense than it just being a ship, because I felt it was kind of lacking in design if it was just some sort of ship. Because it looks like a space worm.
Yeah, I got that.
It does look like a worm. That's one of my first impressions.
Yeah, the same. It just looked like a big old worm, and most all of the spaceships that were being shown, and as far as the design, they're very aesthetically, they weren't as pleasing, right? They were very
very circular.
very blocky looking, just very just metal on metal. No, there's no sleek lines. It was just right. It's a circle, right?
So it was almost like vintage space travel. Very, very like old looking, like definitely not like futuristic. It's like like this particularly is how they would make a TV look in the 50s, because they thought that was sci-fi.
Right, that was how futuristic it would look. It's like, no, square TVs, that's rectangular TVs that's old news. It's circular TVs is the future.
Okay, so let's. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was going to say, like, which I'm glad, as far as future goes, we didn't go in a direction of having circular TVs. Like, I'm glad we stuck with the rectangular format.
Yeah. Oh, I bet, and that makes your job easier too.
It's much easier. Everything's a square.
So There was the next thing I want to talk about is actually at this part.
Okay.
This part right here where he's sealing the document for whatever. And what I want to talk about is her and the Paul's mom. So another quick aside, I only know one character's name in this movie.
Okay.
Paul. They did a terrible job establishing, like, I know who the Baron is, and then I know who the Bene Gesserits are. And you know, I know Arrakis and the Harkonnen and all of that stuff. But like, as far as actual character names, I only know Paul's. I want to say that's like the only one that was actually said several times. Anyways, so
what? Duncan, Idaho.
Okay, Duncan. Okay.
I would say yeah. I'll say Duncan. So, yeah.
That is the fourth thing. I don't know if this will work. Yeah, it's just going to glare with all that light. But my fourth note is Duncan, Idaho ? Greatest name for a character ever.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for a crossover where Duncan, Idaho goes to find Tony Montana.
Okay. Okay. That's
a logical crossover that's going to happen, or we find out that he's a descendant of Tony Montana.
Right.
Okay. And then there's just, and actually the family is actually just the states, and they just have all the names.
Yeah. Just all the last name is just states.
So my question about this scene here is after he puts his ring on and seals the wax and all of that, this woman starts, like looking at Paul's mom, and the movie does like this vibrating thing, which makes it seem like they could be vibrating each other, because by this point you've already seen the voice stuff with Paul and his mom. I'm like, so like we get to it where there's a thing with Paul and this old bat that takes place, and I feel like that's what they were trying to prepare you for, but like there's just this weird connection thing going on with the three of them, and I'm like, why is this happening now? Like there's no story behind it. Like I know you guys are all connected with your secret powers or whatever, but why is this what's happening?
Why at this moment?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, at first it was the first, I would say maybe 20-25 minutes, or maybe even 30 minutes. It was 2 hour and a half movie, were very jarring in the fact of just how much they're cramming in a sense of like, just Paul's mom's teaching him how to use his voice, and then and so one thing I did try to do watching this movie, I tried to disconnect myself from the book, right? I try to go in as in like, okay, this fresh pair of eyes, I'm a new person, never really read the books but heard about him, interested, and just like if I was a new person, I saw this opening where this mother's teaching her son how to use this power, and in your head you're like, okay, what is that? Like what's going on? Is this like, what kind of ability is this? What is it? Mental? Is it like, what's going on? And then with this scene here, like you were saying, Chris, with the whole vibration thing, it's like, why is it at this moment it's happening? What's so special that at this moment they gotta do the like resonating thing, as I call it?
Yeah.
You
got anything on it, Steve?
Well, I mean, my opinion of it is this: they're building the framework of the whole Bene Gesserit, and their place in the universe of Dune. They're doing it for two reasons. First of all, they've already announced it. There's going to be a spin-off series on HBO Max called Dune: The Sisterhood, which is going to follow the lives of members of the Bene Gesserit.
Okay.
And so, they really, and that's going to come out probably around the same time as the sequel. So they really needed to establish some of the mythology of this group in the series so that could go forward as well.
Do you think that series is based off of some of the books?
I have no idea. I've never read any of the Son's books. The son of the author wrote, I want to say he wrote like 10 books, and I never read any of them. I've read all of the original series books, and remember them from varying degrees. I read all of them when I was a teenager, so it's been a few years.
Right.
Okay, so I do want to talk about the Bene Gesserit, because there's a lot of they're in this, but yet they're like, I don't know. I feel like they're almost, if it wasn't for Paul, they wouldn't be anything. My next question, and it's, I have this question twice, kind of. The first, let me ask both of them,
Okay.
and then explain where I'm coming from. The first one is, why is the Emperor jealous of who I call Poe? Because I don't know any other character's name. And then the second question is,
it's Leto, Duke Leto Atreides. It's the father.
Okay.
okay.
His mother is Jessica, and then he's Paul, and then the girl Zendaya plays. I believe it's pronounced Johnny.
Johnny, yeah.
Okay, well, she doesn't matter in this movie. But so why? So the first one is, why is the Emperor jealous of Leto? And then the second question is, and this, I had to have written this one down because this word must have been used. Why does the Emperor fear the Atreides? I feel like they didn't really.
Let's have slept through that part, Chris, because they do actually explain that, and it's obviously explained much better in the book. But in the movie, they make mention that the voice of House Atreides is growing in the Landsrat, and they have a hierarchical society where you have the Emperor up here, but then you have all the great houses below him, which are the Landsrat, and they're what give the Emperor his power. So if they rebel, the Emperor loses his power. Well, House Atreides is starting to grow their voice in the Landsrat and become more powerful through strength, and just his honor and his nobility.
So what part?
On the other side of the coin, you have House Harkonnen. They are growing their power through brutality and the money they're making from mining the spice.
Right.
So the overarching theme here is that the Emperor sees a way to bring House Harkonnen down and Atreides down and keep himself in power by having the Harkonnen spend the money that they had to spend to bring all that military to bear on Dune, to take it back from the Atreides. They diminish in their power and their strength. Also, by wiping out House Atreides, he wipes out a rival. Paul even mentions it towards the end of the movie. He says, why to what's the Emperor's representative, Dr. Kynes, Liet Kynes. He says, tell the Emperor that I'll marry, one of his daughters. He has no sons. And she says, that's not what the Emperor wants. The Emperor wants to take down those two houses.
Yeah, I remember that part at the end. When did they say that he was gaining favor with the other houses? Also, I was under the impression that there were only three. There was the Emperor, whatever the Emperor, and then the Harkonnen, and then the Atreides.
No, because there's like the Sardaukar. I can't remember what house they're part of. They're the Emperor's Blade, but they're their own house as well. I think there's like 13 houses.
So are you going off of? So now you're going off of information that was not made available to me in this movie? Because I'm a Dune normie. I watched the movie with Sting, and then I must have watched the sci-fi thing that they did. But I mean those were back in the middle 2000s.
Yeah.
When I watched that.
I think in the miniseries it was made more abundantly clear that there were multiple houses. In the books, they make it clear that there are houses. They describe the Landsrat as, you know, and lay out in some detail what makes it up. In the movie, no, they say it, but they only say it once. And much like their explanation of the spice, it's not quite enough for someone to understand why any of it's important.
It's a little weak.
Yep.
Okay. Another question. Does anyone else think seeing bagpipes being played in the funny is hilarious?
Yes, I thought that scene was hilarious.
Yeah. When they were getting out of that ship, I just every time I see it, I just laugh.
I love bagpipes and I love violins. So anytime you can work either of those things into something, I'll watch it. I kind of wish Star Wars had worked bagpipes or violins into something.
That would be cool. I mean, I will say though, the integration that they did use of the bagpipes and then transitioning over to the actual orchestral set background sound, I thought that was really cool.
Okay.
I thought that was neat. Yeah. You know, that's you know, one of my my high points for the movies. Again, visual, but the audio as well. The audio design was really well done.
Well, and there's another thing. So they put that in there with the bagpipes and stuff. They cut out the point. At a point, you see Gurney Halleck open up a book and look down. It's a book of poetry, and he actually repeats some lines as he's walking with Lady Jessica, as you know, they're seeing Dune for the first time. It's character development that they left out, but they kind of put in. You know, here's this guy. He's probably one of the greatest generals in the known galaxy of Dune. You know, they mention that, you know, some of the best fighters are trained by Gurney Halleck and Duncan Idaho. But he's well-rounded. He's a musician. He's a poet. He's a warrior. Which, you know, if you go back into days gone by and you look at people like Saladin from the Crusades, you know, he was a Muslim warrior, but he was also a musician and a poet. He was one of the greatest generals we've ever seen, but he also was a poet and a musician. Sun Tzu, same thing. He was a great tactician and general. He was also a writer and a poet to a certain extent. So they try and tie Gurney Halleck into that group to give you a bigger vision of who he is. They just kind of they come a little bit short in showing you everything that they could show you.
Right. Just because, well, it was 2.5 hours long and they had time constraints.
Look, ask George Lucas, putting a 15-minute music video in the middle of Return of the Jedi when he got to remake it does not necessarily make it a better movie.
Right. Very true.
So let's talk about the Bene Gesserit. I've got some stuff on them. Like, what are they doing? Like, what is their role in all of this? And why does she trust the Baron? And like, what's really weird. So, do you guys remember that scene where like she's in there making a deal with the Baron, and then they're like behind that force field thing, and then at the end of the scene, she requested for them to spare Paul and Jessica's life, right?
Right.
But she seemed submissive to the Baron, and I'm like, wait a second, you're supposed to be a badass bitch, like you're to me at the beginning when she was torturing Paul, like like she's somewhat heartless and powerful.
That was a test.
Right. Fair enough, but it was a torture test.
Well, it was. They believe him to be something that is way more powerful than anything that's ever come before.
Right.
If he wasn't able to control himself, they were going to have to put him down and fast before he becomes too strong.
Right.
and you see that plays out over the series of the books and everything. She is a badass. She's the leader of the Bene Gesserit, and she didn't get there by being a nice person.
Right.
She is submissive to the Baron because in that scene, it suits her ends.
Okay. You froze there for a second.
So they do talk quite a bit in the movie about, well, not quite a bit, but there's the scene between her and Jessica where she explains that, they've been breeding bloodlines for centuries to try and bring about the Kwisatz Haderach. And,
I have no idea what you're saying.
Well, she calls him that. She says that Paul could be that. So that's their thing, is they're trying to bring about the ultimate chosen one to that can see both forwards and backwards in time. It's a religious thing. It's
okay.
You have to remember when these books were written, it was at a time where certain religions weren't trusted, and so it was an allegory.
Has that changed?
Well, yeah, because it's now you've got Islam and they don't trust. This was back when they didn't trust Catholics.
I was thinking they don't trust. No one trusts anyone right now.
Well, that's true.
That's yeah.
So that kind of leads into my next thing. So like these Bene Gesserits are powerful people. And from what I understand after a conversation I had last night, there's actually more to it than just the voice. There's supposed to be more magic involved here. But my next question, and we're going to kind of like move this along here, is how the hell did they get that gag? I must have missed it. Wait, maybe they were drugged. I didn't get the whole drink thing, but like, how the hell did they get the gag on Paul's mom, Jessica? Because like, if she sees someone coming, you're not getting.
She can just use her voice, right?
They caught her while she was sleeping.
Yeah.
Okay, so now
they show that scene where they have the tiny little pills that help them sleep.
So I don't remember any pills, but I remember seeing a tiny little like shot glass thing.
Yeah, there was tiny little. Yeah, on that little
the tray.
There was a little divot with a little white pill in it, and they gave one to Paul, and they gave one to Jessica and Leto. Yeah, and Jessica and Leto had 2 shot glasses and 2 pills.
And Leto said no.
Right. But Leto doesn't have the power. So if you take out Jessica.
Well, yeah. When Leto said no, that's when he got. I don't even want to talk about the shields. That's when he got assassinated.
Yeah. He woke up and walked out there, betrayed by their doctor. Their doctor, who was supposedly unable to betray them, but he's been broken by the taking of his wife.
Right.
Yeah.
Masterfully done in the movie too, because in the book they describe in great detail what has happened to his wife. Pieces of his wife have been mailed to him to try and break him and bring him back, to make him betray the family that he should not be able to betray. They eventually break him, and obviously he does. He doesn't get nearly the role he should have had. He's a much bigger character in the book.
Yeah, you wouldn't even have had to send me pieces. I would have done it anyways.
Well,
like seriously,
like bro, it's look. You don't look. You took my wife. I got it. I'll do it. Just stop.
Like I get it. Okay, so she must have taken those pills. I just didn't see her do it. Because that whole thing didn't make any sense to me. So let's just go ahead, move this along. My biggest gripe.
To quote another YouTube
I would
channel,
actually like to hear.
It was so they could have the movie, Chris.
Right. My biggest gripe on this movie is the ending. The setup for the fight was okay. them kind of explaining, like how what's really happening here. And the fight was whatever. I think the fighting style is weird. But I know that's a Dune thing. I remember thinking the same thing in the original movie, and I'm like, this must be explained in the book the way that they're doing this, because it's a different kind of fighting. Anyways,
different kind of fighting style. Yeah.
My big problem is Paul wins this fight. This is his first kill. He's a kid. He just participated in some sort of like holy
ritual
thing, and there wasn't much acknowledgement of what had just happened. And I felt like it kind of lacked a lot of the power, particularly for the climax of your movie.
I disagree. There's a lot of stuff that Jessica is saying and thinking that they shows that, when Paul does that act of killing that person, Paul Atreides dies. He ceases to be Paul and becomes something else, which they'll establish in the next movie.
Right. Like, so when you say,
and the fighting style is based on the Bedouins. I mean, the Fremen are basically the Bedouins of the universe. They live out in a desert where there's no water, there's very little life, and yet they manage to not only survive but actually live pretty good lives out in the middle of a desert. That I don't know about you two, but I grew up in the desert. 15-20 minutes tops, and I'm eaten by a sandworm.
Right.
There's sandworms here?
There could be.
There probably is. It's just we've been doing the Phoenix walk, Phoenix walk move where we haven't activated any of them, so we're fine.
What did you think about the ending, Avery?
So I thought it was a good setup for what's coming next. I think that the way how it was interesting to me was the mixture of seeing the foreshadowing of Paul dying and then also seeing the mixture of the actual fight. It kind of threw me off a bit. But then once Steven what he just said, it kind of explained a little bit, like, the Paul is pretty much dead and this is like a new awakened version. That kind of made sense to me why that foreshadowing existed and what was going on as with the fighting itself. I did feel that the fighting part itself, I felt like the acknowledgement after he defeated the guy was a little underwhelming. Like it just seemed like it was kind of seemed like, oh, okay, well, you killed a guy. Yeah, you're part of our group now, and then let's just go. I figured it'd be a little more ceremonial in that aspect of it.
That's what I want. That they should have, because ironically, it's not the death of the man that would have upset the Fremen. Right. As you saw, they quickly moved in and wrapped his body in plastic.
Right.
What is the holiest thing, the most important thing to
water.
People that live in the desert?
Water.
Yes, water. Mm-hmm. And they actually mentioned that when they're talking to him, that to take Jessica and Paul and kill them for their water.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine harvesting your dead people for water?
Man.
I mean,
I kind of feel
15 years in Phoenix, we might have to start doing that.
I was literally about to say that. I'm like, I feel that's probably going to be a thing here in Phoenix.
Hey, we don't need to talk about the canal system and how this has already been done before.
Right.
By a previous civilization that lived here.
Right.
But there weren't 6 million of them.
Yeah.
All right. So let's do final thoughts.
Okay.
I can't wait for the second one. I thought the ending was weak sauce, but it left me wanting to know more about Paul's story. I think, I want to. I know what you're talking about when you use whatever term it is, the Mecha, when he becomes that thing of power that the Bene Gesserits are concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're also trying to bring about that person.
Mm-hmm.
They just thought he was probably centuries, at least many years away, but probably centuries away. Jessica was never supposed to bear a son to the Duke. She's not his,
Right.
and that's something to bear in mind. She's not his wife. She is a consort.
Right.
Well, they call her the concubine in the movie.
Yeah, she's a concubine.
Okay.
And she was only meant to bring him daughters. There was supposed to be daughters to marry off to further that bloodline, to try and bring about what it looks like Paul is going to become, or if you read the books, what you know.
Well, so okay, so I know that conversation you're talking about, which was at the end of him putting the hand in the box.
With Jabbar.
Yeah, and to me, what it sounded like is Jessica had a choice of whether she was going to have a male or a female. The way that
that plays into the magic you were talking about.
Yeah.
They have total and complete control over their bodies, so they have the ability to know those things.
Yeah, I was like, that would be freaking rad. But
yeah,
right.